When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I've been waiting for over a year to have an episode like this one. Today, I'm bringing on special guest Scott Wolter and his wife, Janet. You'll recognize the name because Scott was on the History Channel. He probably still is doing narrations and stuff. But he had a show on there called America Unearthed. And he would tell the secret history of America. You know, he would go over rune stones that were found, ancient mine sites. He's real big into, Masons and the hooked X. And he would go into giants in America, just all the real history, pre-Columbus, just a wealth of knowledge, fascinating material. And I reached out to him and we lined this up. We scheduled something for tonight, and I'm over the moon excited. I'm nervous. I don't usually get nervous for a show. I like to just have a conversation, but right now I feel like I'm doing a job interview or something. So what we're going to do, we'll get him on the show. We'll get him on here, in just a second. See, I'm nervous. We'll get him on here in just a second. Let him introduce himself. Let his wife, Janet, introduce herself. And we'll just go into it. I do have a long list of questions. I don't want to have to ask a whole lot because I like to let, my guests control the pace of the show and the content. But I do want to get to a few things, while I have his attention. So I look forward to this. For those of you with Patreon, there's going to be a video for it too. And I intend to be sharing a picture of something that I have here in my office that I want him to discuss with me. I've waited all my life for answers to this one. And if anybody can answer it, it's Scott. I have what I hope is an old artifact, and I bet he can identify it. So, is it something? Is it nothing? I guess we'll all find out together. All right, so just a second, I will go ahead and bring him on. All right, we'll go ahead and get straight into the show. Scott and Janet, thank you again for coming on here. I really appreciate you guys. We talked a little bit off air, and I got a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. Let's just start off kind of chronologically. If you guys would be willing to share like your origin story, how you guys got into this whole field of forensic geology and discovering the truth. I would love to hear all about that.
Well, why don't I start, and then I'll let Janet pick up. But I mean, for me, this started back in July of 2000 when I was, I like to say, minding my own business, running my materials forensic laboratory, American Petrographic Services over in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I was contacted by a representative with the Runestone Museum to study, to perform a forensic analysis on the Kensington Runestone. And I remember looking at the guy and I said, "What's that?" What the hell is that? I have no idea what the runestone was. And so he explained it to me. And anyway, so we did this work, and it became pretty evident based on the geology that the weathering of the inscription, I mean, everybody knows the rock is old, right? The question is, how old is the inscription? And it became pretty obvious to me early on that the inscription was weathered and was old. Now, the next question was how old? And so what I did was I performed a weathering study using tombstones, obviously of known age because they have the dates right there, with the same like mineralogy as the runestone. And I was able to calculate how long it took for minerals on the surface of the tombstones to come off that had already fallen off of the Kensington runestone. So whatever that number was when they began to come off, we knew the runestone was older because they were already gone. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's genius. Yeah, that's a good way to measure it.
Yeah, and so that number came out to be about 200 years. But that number is 200 years from the date the stone was pulled out of the ground in 1898, because it hasn't been in a weathering environment since. So you push it back 200 years from 1898. Well, there was certainly nobody there except maybe some surveyors or, Christian missionaries wandering the woods there, a French fur trader or two, but there was really nobody that could have carved it. Certainly not Olaf Oman, and certainly not anybody in the late 19th century, which is what the world currently thinks. Now, I didn't know anything about that historical paradigm that was going on at the time. And I just came out and wrote my report, and I said, it's genuine, good for you.
And it's dated 1362.
Right.
Self-dated.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is 130 years before Chris. That guy that never set foot on the continent we now call the United States, that already had millions of people living here.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that whole premise is ridiculous. Yeah, it's borderline insane, but it's what we have. But in any case, so I wrote my report, and not long after, I was blitzed by criticism and questions, and I was more than happy to answer the questions, but it wasn't the questions. It was people just didn't like the answer.
And
well,
can we tell them about the conference?
Oh yeah, go ahead. You tell me.
Yeah. Scott was invited to speak and give this information, his findings, to an archaeological conference up here in the Midwest.
Oh, Jesus.
And we walked in, and he went up to the front desk to ask what room we were supposed to go to. And there was a man standing there, and Scott said his name, and the guy looked at him and went, "Ah," and turned his back on him.
Oh my gosh.
He was standing next to a little short wall. He was right next to it, like right here is the wall. And he heard my name. He goes, "Oh," and he turns to the wall. And he's literally 6 inches from the wall.
It was insane. And we looked at each other like, what?
I know. I'm like, dude.
We had no idea that this was a controversial subject.
Yeah.
Even.
And I looked at him and I said, dude, I just want to know what room it's in. It turns out that guy was the state archaeologist.
For Minnesota.
At the time.
At that time, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, talk about a jackwagon. I can't even tell you. I've never seen anything. It was friggin' bizarre.
So then you gave your findings.
Well, then I gave my presentation. It was like a half-day seminar. They had multiple speakers, and I was the last one. And when I gave my speech, people had come in to hear it. It was packed. And when I got done, half the people kind of looked around, were shaking their heads, and the other half were like euphoric and coming up to me and, "Oh my God, this is fantastic. Do you know what this means?" And I went, "No." I had no idea. So it was an eye opener, to say the least.
Yeah, because to Scott, it was presenting hard scientific fact,
right,
repeatable, provable, not debatable. And then he had people other people come up to him and say, well, that's all interesting, Mr. Wolter, but don't you know the Kensington Ruin Stone is a fake?
And I just said to him, I go, didn't you hear what I just said? No, it's not. I said, the rock has spoken, and I don't care what your opinion is. The rock, I trust rocks. I don't trust some people. And the rock told me it was real. And that has been my, I want to say my rock, you know, but it's, that was the basis that served as the foundation for everything that followed. And, you know, if the rock told me it was real, I believe it. It doesn't care. It doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't have, you know, any horse in the race at all. And so if it says that it's real, that means that somebody carved it. They came from some place for some reason. And so that's what we've spent the last 15, 16 years working on.
Figuring it out.
And I think we know, we know all the answers. I think we got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I dare not ask the question, you know, what is the answer? Because I know that's probably coming up in some future works, right?
Well,
it's out there.
Well, no, the basic premise is out there. It's the details that we can't share. But the Templars really, this is a much longer story than people understand. It started back in Egypt, really, with an ideology, a certain ideology of that's called monotheistic dualism that has opposing points that keep things in balance, you know, good, bad, light, dark, male, female, heaven and earth, all that concept of opposites that keep things in balance. And the hooked X represents that. That's part of what the hooked X represents, is that that ideology of monotheistic dualism. And the main emphasis of the dualism, I like to think, is the male and female aspects of the Godhead, right? That keep things in balance. Unfortunately, the Roman Catholic Church came along and created a patriarchal version of deity that is frankly a myth. I mean, it's made up, but it's been ingrained in our culture for 2,000 years. People have been indoctrinated. Another word would be brainwashed into believing the dogma that, you know, the position that they have created, that Jesus was the Son of God. And that's not true. I mean, I hate to break it to your audience, but it's not true. And in fact, it gets way more interesting than that. But the feminine aspect has been deified and marginalized, and that's why women are viewed in our society the way they are today. And it's definitely not right. That's not what the ancients believed. It's not what the Templars believed.
I mean, think about the ancient cultures have always revered the sacred feminine, right?
Right.
Women are the life givers. Mother Earth is the life giver.
On planet Earth.
The sun is a male deity and fertilizes Mother Earth every spring. And new life grows. I mean, this is the way it was always thought of. And not to mention the planet Venus, which is the consort of the sun, which follows him as a morning star, or precedes him as a morning star, follows him as an evening star on the same path. Yep,
they follow the same path, and in mystical circles, they're called the eternal travelers.
Right.
So, and yeah, go ahead, Jen.
So we have coined a phrase that we call these families that were the followers of this ancient practice that kept it alive and going in a veiled way. We call them the Venus families. And that's who we believe the Templars were part of this movement, and that they came here to find their sanctuary and their freedom from the monarchs of Europe and the freedom from the church, so that they could practice their own beliefs. And that's why they came over here. And the ruin stone was carved by them. It was their
stake in the ground.
Their stake in the ground. But why here? Why Minnesota? All the way to the center of the continent?
Right.
There's a reason. Because they followed the water. They followed the headwater of the waters that flowed from the Great Lakes to the rivers. And Minnesota is the center of the continent. That's where the waters come from.
The geographic center,
And
right?
then you can claim all the land associated with those water systems, the drainage basins,
Yeah.
Which is all the land, right?
which is half the continent, right?
Well, it's more than half the continent, but it was a very logical system. It was the tradition of the time in the 14th century in France, and the Dutch had a similar practice. So, nobody's ever looked at it logically, and no one has really gone down the pathways that you need to go down to figure this thing out, because they started with the wrong premise from the beginning. It's a hoax. So why would anybody bother, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's not worth chasing after all this stuff and doing all this work because it's a hoax anyway. Well, the opposite was my conclusion. So I knew there had to be answers out there. You just have to go look for them. And sure as heck, we found them. And they all make sense. They all fit together, as they must, Bo, if you're on the right path, right?
Yeah. Well, you're blowing my mind here. I'm keeping up because you guys are great at explaining, and you made it to where even somebody like me can understand this. You know what I mean? Like I'm with you on all of it. I'm keeping up, but just the information
Good.
is astounding. Because I start to ask the question, well, who would want to cover it up? Who would try to hide history? But you answered
That's
that.
what we wondered.
I answered that question without even knowing the question.
You did.
It is the church. And you know something, Bo, you live, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, a lot of them are Roman Christians.
Yeah.
And, my goal here is not to try to demonize the Roman church. I'm not trying to tell people that what they want to believe is wrong or anything like that. I mean, people are free to believe in whatever they want, and they're free to not accept anything that I might say or Janet might say. They can say this is complete bunk. That is their choice. Okay. Right. However, what I will tell you is that what we're telling you is true. And, the church is the antagonist in this story without any question. The church has caused more harm in the world. And a lot of people are already aware of the abuse and, the lies and everything else that's going on. But, the thing that I'm most offended by, and I'm just going to put it out there, okay, is I'm a Freemason. I don't know if you know that.
Well, I found out today, but I was doing a little bit of research, and I heard you on another show, and I heard you welcomed somebody else into the brotherhood. But that's the first time I heard anything about it.
Yeah. Well, and the church looks, they condemn Freemasonry. And you have to ask yourself if you understand anything about the craft, because I studied the craft for about 12 years before I became a Mason myself. But I was convinced by the evidence that it was a great organization and something that I wanted to be part of. But here's the dirty little secret, and I'm just going to tell you. And I want your listeners to listen carefully and to think about this. Don't react to what I'm about to say. Think about it. Let it sink in. And you tell me if it doesn't make sense. Okay?
Right.
And here's what it is. In Freemasonry, we don't care if you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a Buddhist. Native brothers take their obligation on an eagle feather. You can take your obligation on any holy book you want. And we don't care. The only thing that we ask people to do is make a statement in a belief in a higher power. The reason for that is to teach humility, that you aren't the greatest thing on this earth, that you don't know it all, that you are beholden to something greater than yourself. And therefore, if you have that, then you are truly ready to receive new information because you admit that you don't know it all. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay, so if you follow that, getting back to deity, we don't care what you call it. We don't care how you venerate it. We don't care what the holy book is that you read, because we're all talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And here's the dirty little secret that organized religion doesn't want you to know. They require that you go through a human conduit to get to creator, a priest, a cleric, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you can do it yourself. You can have a relationship with deity all by yourself, and you can celebrate and you can pray. You can do whatever you want all by yourself. You don't need anybody's permission, and you sure as hell don't need a human conduit, because that's where all the problems come from, because they don't want to give up the manipulation, the power, the control, the money. And I'm sorry to just tell it straight, but those are the facts. And you can't tell me that doesn't make sense.
I love hearing you tell it straight. For me personally, and I know I won't receive judgment from you or whatever. I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus. But I don't believe that you have to have an organized religion, just as you're saying. I don't feel like I have to go to a church every Sunday. I don't believe, I was raised up, I'll say I was raised Catholic, but I went to Catholic church with my dad and my grandmother, a couple times a month until I was about 12 years old.
Right.
It never made sense about going to confession and, having them tell me what to say.
What are you going to tell them your secrets for? Who does that? Come on.
Right.
Give me a break.
And, and if that's what my grandmother does to this day, she's in her 90s.
Good for her. Good for her.
Yeah. And good on her,
It works for her.
It's just, I don't feel that conviction. I don't feel like that's what I need to do. So
you don't, man.
Yeah.
You can have that relationship with your deity, with your God, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That personal relationship between you and it or her or him, whatever. That's your business and nobody else's, unless you decide you want to, get other people involved. But it's your business. It's not the church's right to give people salvation according to a certain set of rules. That's just BS. I'm sorry.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
Now, being a Freemason, that's shrouded in secrecy, right? That everybody wants to peek behind that curtain and say, like, oh, they're doing this and they're riding on a goat and they're whatever.
I will tell you this, Bo. I have yet to see the goat. I've been through the Blue Lodge, the Scottish Rite, the York Rite. I've done a lot of stuff. I have yet to see the goat.
Okay.
All right, to the right.
Maybe
level
I'm not.
there.
Maybe I'm not high enough. Maybe I don't know what it is.
So there's no nefarious plan that Freemasons have or anything.
No. No. Listen, there are other organizations that are involved in making the decisions that affect us all, and maybe there are some Masons that are part of those groups. But the group that decides what happens in the world is not Freemasonry.
Right.
Not anymore. It used to be that pretty much anybody who was anyone that was important back in the day was also a member of the craft. And there are some big movers and shakers out there that are brothers. There's no doubt about that. But we don't sit down and lodge and plot what's going to happen in the world. That's just not the way it goes. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you, but we're not that special.
You broke my heart. I was hoping to find out, when this whole pandemic was going to be over. Like maybe you guys had some kind of secret formula for it.
No.
Oh,
Well,
that would
but
be
you know
nice.
what, Bo? The one thing I will tell you that has changed throughout, the last 250 years. Back when our country was founded, pretty much all of our founding fathers were Freemasons. Not a few of them, not half of them, damn near almost all of them. Okay. And back then, when they were founding the country and carrying on the tradition, the obligation, something that they called the covenant, to establish this sanctuary that Janet talked about a little bit earlier, where people could live in freedom from the tyranny of the monarchs of Europe and freedom from the persecution of the Roman Church. That's why we have a separation of church and state. And that is why we fought a revolution against a monarchy. And, I don't want to get too much into politics, but I will say this, that the people that attacked the Capitol on January 6th had a misguided view of what they think our democracy is about. Absolutely, they did. And part of what we would like to do with anything that we might do on television going forward is to help educate people what our founding fathers really intended, what they really believed, and what they wanted to see this nation become. And I can tell you that they would be heartbroken to see the division and the hate and the misogyny and the racism that is rampant in our country today. They would be disappointed, even though many of these great men that we lionize all the time, like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, owned slaves, right? I mean, let's be honest, they did. Yeah. But you also have to take into consideration context of the times, and people will look back on this time and consider the context. But frankly, we have taken steps backwards in my lifetime, for sure. And we can do better. We can all do better. And I think one of the things that the people listening, regardless of their viewpoints, is we are all one species. All of our blood is red. Yes. And we all contain the same DNA up until just a little tiny bit that changes. We're really all one. And we need to get back to thinking that way. And there are so many times you see beautiful acts of kindness and just human beings being wonderful to each other. And we've gotten away from that. We've let these artificial things get in the way of appreciating us all. And it's sad, but we also have the capability in us to do better. And I think we will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So. That's well said. Yeah, there is a lot of division, and for whatever reason, I feel like it's on purpose. You know,
of course it is.
There's a big push to keep us, you know, fighting amongst each other. So whatever powers it be at the time, it don't matter if there's an R or a D in front of their name. You know, I really don't think that matters. They all have their own.
Well, you can find fault on both sides of the aisle, but you know, as a person that is a scientist and a person that you know, I'm often called to testify in court cases. I'm a licensed professional, and truth, facts, evidence. I mean, these are the basic fundamentals of my work and of my life.
Right.
And when I see things out there that are blatantly false, that are blatantly not true, it's really frustrating to see it because some people believe what certain people tell them. And a lot of these certain people will say these things and they know full well that it's not true.
Right.
They do it as a means to an end. Yeah. And that is where we're in big trouble. And, you know, I'm not really sure what the answer is, but, you know, one of the things I think it's important that we definitely touch on in this conversation that dovetails with this subject matter that's kind of heavy. It's actually kind of depressing given the state of the world today. But I think what we could do is we could take this to literally another level that will put it in a completely different context, and it will surprise people. And hopefully it will shake people. And hopefully it'll make them rethink some of the petty stuff that we get caught up in life sometimes, and just make them rethink a little bit. So I don't know, Jan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've forgotten where we've come from, how far we've come as a society and as humans.
As a species.
But our founding fathers left clues for us that validate some of these things we're talking about. A reverence for the sacred feminine, this balance that we've talked about. I had a co-researcher that I wrote a book with, Alan Butler, and Alan and I discovered in Washington, D.C. that the Washington Memorial, the monument, its shadow points to things on certain days that are very telling, including the winter solstice, which is December 21st,
Right.
shortest, darkest day of the year, and it's Scott's birthday.
I think you're supposed to say that in reverse. My
Yeah,
birthday,
yeah.
the shortest, darkest.
I should have said that. That's what I usually say. Anyway, the shadow plays with the ellipse, which is just south of the White House. And it's the only time of year where the shadow can reach that. And it just penetrates the ring of the ellipse, which is an egg-shaped oval ellipse, right? So it is truly, it's the fertilization of the sun,
Right.
with Earth being demonstrated right there every year for us if we just take the time to notice it. And it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. On top of the symbology, the masters that these people had to be to line this stuff up, that alone is almost mythological. It's so
Yeah.
It is.
So
It
wow.
is. Yes.
Yeah.
No computers,
yeah.
calculators,
Right.
none of that. And they had to understand astronomy to a very high level. And it's amazing they were able to accomplish it. And that's not the only thing that it does. It on Constitution Day, September 17th, the shadow goes right up the steps of the Capitol,
Wow.
because that was the time of the great harvest and the ancient mystery schools of Demeter in Greece. These are the things that they were celebrating, and they waited to sign the Constitution until that day as a symbolic gesture.
Yeah.
For us to always be able to figure out. And there's a lot more going on there too that we found. And so they left us clues hidden in plain sight for anyone to find. I'm not an astronomer.
Right.
All started to fall into place and make sense to us. And that's because we understood their ideology.
Yeah.
Because starting with the very rune stone that Scott's talking about, which had this mysterious hooked X symbol on it, that's what led us down this path of investigation and into their ideology. Because for me personally, the thing I love to study about history is motive. What motivated people to do the things they did?
Right.
And some of the things they did were incredible sacrifices of self and family. And why would they go to that length? Because they were doing it for future generations.
Yeah.
For us.
For what they believed was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? Democracy. The
Yeah.
world hasn't seen that.
And they believed it was their place, right? It was like their calling to make sure this
It was
Exactly.
it was their destiny.
Exactly.
It was all part of what they called the covenant, which is an agreement with God to fulfill this mission.
And in this case, agreement with goddess.
Yeah. Yeah. And they use that term, the goddess, repeatedly. And you know, what's interesting about Freemasonry is the goddess was all through it. And you know, the evidence is in Washington, D.C., like Janet says. I mean, if you go to the city, just count the statues, male versus female, and it's far and away it's female. And right up until you look at the statue on top of the Capitol Dome, it's not a dude, it's a goddess.
I was going to mention that. I was going to say that explains why she's on the Capitol building, right?
That's right. That's
she's
right.
on the highest point, and she's looking to the east, to the sunrise.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
On a
It's
certain
truly,
day. On a
truly
certain
beautiful.
day.
And there are many other hidden gems around the city and ways for us to discover them. And in fact, the whole key to the system that they developed, which is based on the megalithic yard, which is an Earth-centric measure, also on the planet Venus. There is a way they preserve that because it's the key to figuring out why things are certain distances from each other around the city. And the key to it is a little tiny building on the Capitol grounds that is the most beautiful little structure. It's just a little brick building, hidden, sort of nestled into the landscape. And it was placed there by the landscape architect, Frederick Law Olmsted at the time, designed into the grounds. And most people would never even notice that it's there. But when we walked by it, we went, what in the heck is this? We were just drawn into it. And we went down the steps, and there's a water fountain in there. It's quiet. And there's this little trickle of water, and you go to the back, and there's an iron grate over a window, and there's a grotto where water, a spring, is trickling out. And it's got seats built into it. It's six-sided. The whole thing is magically mystical, right?
Yeah.
And we figured out what it was all about. There's these slots carved into it, and that's for measuring, counting Venus as it descends.
The descent of Venus,
in its brightest state, which is every 4 years, depending on, well, every 8 years in this case, because it has to be when it's an evening star. But it's a magical place. And they did it to preserve how to find the megalithic yard, which is the key to the city.
And this,
So the dimensions that Stonehenge in England,
right.
they matched the megalithic yard measuring system. The Newport Tower that we did a number of episodes on America Unearthed. We featured the tower. There are megalithic dimensions there as well. The Kensington runestone by diagonal is exactly one megalithic yard in diagonal. So these are not coincidences. These tell us about who carved it, what their ideology was, and what their intention was. And what's so beautiful about this story is that the Templars, like I said, this story started in Egypt. It went, the followers of Akhenaten were driven out of Egypt. He was the monotheistic dualism pharaoh of Egypt, and his followers, the Aryans, were driven out by the old pharaohs of Egypt that still embraced the old Apis bull worship. They didn't want to have the new religion come in. So that ideology was driven up into what is now Jerusalem, and the earliest followers of the Aryans were people like John the Baptist, Jesus, and their descendants. And what's amazing that a lot of people don't understand is that the reason that Jesus and John the Baptist are so important historically is not necessarily because of who they were, but when they were. And you might say to yourself, what the hell are you talking about, Scott? But if you want me to tell you, I'll tell you, and it will blow you away. You ready for this?
I'm ready. Let me hear it.
Okay. All right, I want you to write this down. Precession of the equinoxes. I want your audience to write this down, and I want you to Google it and study it, because precession of the equinoxes is the key to the history of humanity.
Especially religion.
And history of religions. So let me just try to explain it.
Sure.
Every year on the morning of the spring equinox, when the sun rises, if you look to the east, okay, and you see the sun rise, but before the sun rises, if you look to the east, you will see a constellation in the eastern sky. It'll be one of the 12 primary constellations of the zodiac, because the zodiacal belt goes right through the eastern sky. Are you with me?
I am.
Plane of the ecliptic.
So when that sun rises, it goes through that constellation. That's considered sacred to the ancient mystics, to the ancient astronomer priests, and that is considered an age. Now there's 12 constellations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever constellation is in the eastern sky, that is that particular zodiacal year. It might be Pisces, it might be Taurus, it might be Sagittarius, whatever, right? Now, because of the Earth's wobble, there's a slight wobble to the turn of the Earth. Because of that, the zodiacal belt is perceived on Earth. It's really not the belt that's moving, it's us, right?
Right.
It slowly rotates through that eastern sky around us, right? And it takes approximately 26,000 years for that zodiacal belt to make one revolution. Okay? That's a long freaking time.
Yes, it is.
But if you divide it by 12 constellations, the average period of one constellation is about 2,160 years. You with me?
I am.
But it isn't divided equally. The time of an age depends on the size of the constellation. So just for an example, let's start with Scorpio, okay? Or excuse me, let's start with Taurus the Bull, which is a large constellation, which lasted a long time, 2,700 years.
Wow.
And in Egypt, they developed what they called the Apis bull culture, where they venerated the bulls. Have you ever heard about the mummies that have been found in Egypt? They're bulls that have been wrapped up like mummies.
Wow, I hadn't heard that. No.
You should look it up.
Look it up.
Yeah.
It goes back to this ancient veneration of Taurus the bull. But when Akhenaten came into power, he came into power at the time when Taurus descended below the horizon and the next constellation took its place. That one was Aries the ram. So he knew it was time to change the religion from polytheistic dualism to monotheistic dualism. We talked about that earlier, right?
Right.
You see it on his chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tut and Akhenaten are both holding the crossed crook and the flail on their chest. The flail herds the bulls, the followers of Taurus, the old religion, and the crook herds the rams, the sheep of Aries,
Wow.
new religion. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay.
On my mind again. Okay.
Oh, we're not done yet, brother.
Yeah.
So crossed on his chest, that represented his attempt to unite the two religions, to make the transition. But it failed. The minor pharaohs of Egypt said, no, we don't like this Apis or this Aries the ram stuff, so we're keeping the old religion, and they drove him out. That's why all of his statues are all defaced, right? And a lot of them were destroyed because they didn't want to change. So his followers, the Aryans, were driven out of Egypt and they went north, actually following the sun. And they eventually settled in a place we now call Jerusalem. Right?
Okay.
And so
Was that the Exodus story?
that would be the Exodus story.
Wow.
A lot of people believe that Moses is actually Akhenaten. I'm one of them. In any case, because Aries was such a small constellation, it only lasted about 1,400 years. And then the next transition happened when a person who was the last pharaoh, the last priest, the last grand master, who's typically depicted wearing a wool shawl, often carrying a shepherd's crook,
Mm-hmm.
lamb in his arm or a lamb in his feet. Who am I talking about?
I don't know his name, but I've seen this depiction.
John the
John the
Baptist,
Wow.
right?
But think
Yeah.
of baptism as initiation.
Well, let's go back for a sec. The ram, the sheep, the wool, shawl, it's all Aries the ram, right?
Right.
Yeah.
He's the last pharaoh of the age of Aries the ram, who initiates or baptizes, is what the church says. It wasn't a baptism, it was an initiation. He was passing the mantle on to a guy by the name of Jesus, who was born of the Lamb of God. What does that mean? It means he was born in the final 4 years of the age of Aries the ram. And then he becomes who? The Fisher King.
Because
Why?
Aquarius.
No,
Pisces.
Pisces.
Okay.
He's the new
You're one
king,
ahead.
the new pharaoh of the age of Pisces, right? And if you're a follower of Jesus, you're a follower of the fish.
Right.
Now, the fish symbol is very interesting because if you know anything about sacred geometry, the key to sacred geometry is something called the Vesica Pisces. So if you take the little tail off the fish That is the key to sacred geometry.
You push two circles together, right?
Yeah. The overlap.
And where those circles come together, that fish bladder in the middle, that vertical almond shape, the
Yeah.
allegorical birth canal
Right.
of sacred geometry is born.
And you often see religious figures depicted in that shape, right?
Like
Mhm.
this.
Wow.
Shoes and things.
Okay, so there's a lot more going on here at another level that the church doesn't tell people about,
Right.
right?
Right.
So how long has it been since Jesus?
Right at 2,000 years, right?
Oh,
Yep.
guess what?
So what's happening?
Do you remember
Hold on.
the
Are you
end
go-
of the end of the world? Go ahead.
What are you thinking?
Like this light bulb just went off behind my head. Are you getting into aliens? Is that where we're going?
Well, not yet.
Well, no.
Not yet, but
That's-
hold on. Let's finish the session. So it's been 2,000 years, and do you remember how they said that the world was going to end in 2012?
2012, yeah, the Mayan calendar.
Right.
Yeah,
And it didn't, did it?
they didn't.
No, because not only was 2012, according to the Mayan calendar, the end of the age of Pisces the fish, it was also the end of the 26,000 year long cycle. What we have just lived through and are living through
Right.
is one of the most profound moments in human history. Think about that. What we're living through right now is the change from one, zodiacal year to the next.
Yeah.
And so Pisces is giving way to the age of Aquarius.
There's your
Right?
Aquarius.
There's Aquarius.
Okay, what
And what is it? Well, Janet will
What-
tell you.
what do we call Aquarius? It's the water bearer,
The
Feminine.
water bearer. Okay.
right? Water bearer. Who bears water during pregnancy?
Yeah, the woman. Yeah.
Amniotic fluid, right?
Yeah.
And she is symbolically giving birth to this new age, this new calendar year, this new cycle. It's a new beginning. And nobody understands this. The other thing that's interesting about precession is there are prophecies that go along with it. And the prophecy of the age of Aquarius is that the transition into the new year, zodiacal year, is going to be rife with turmoil. It's going to be difficult. We're in the middle of it right now. Now, we're going to transition into aliens right now.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready. Almost. Hold on. So all these monumental figures, are representing and leading us through these. Is the alien what leads us through into Aquarius? Is that?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, the feminine really is the symbol of Aquarius, but
Are they
yeah.
from Venus?
the
You know,
aliens
like-
are, well, let's put it this way. So the aliens are pulling for us as humans. And by the way, let's back up and help your audience understand where we're coming from. About a year ago, I was contacted by a person who said he was with the Department of Defense, working for NASIC, the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. And he asked me if I would be interested in helping with disclosure. And I think part of the reason he did that was because he felt like people that had watched America Unearthed believed that we were trying to do things the right way, that we were telling the truth, that we,
You had credibility with the people.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. I love you. You
Well, I
got me.
I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
But anyway, he said that, and he goes, if you'd be willing to help us, I'd be willing to work with you. And I said, well, hell yeah, man. I mean,
Well, you weren't quite hell yeah.
Well,
right
no,
from
well,
the
we had to
get-go.
go through the vetting process. He had to convince me of who he was, and he did that. He actually came and stayed with us for
Yeah.
3
He
days.
came to our house and showed us all his credentials,
Wow.
and we were not big alien.
Well, that
I
was,
don't know. It's just we weren't into aliens. We didn't understand it. But we weren't in a place where we thought there is no such thing. We were sort of in the middle ground. We were tied up in our other research at the time. So when he came here, he had to get us up to speed. And we had to come to a place after a few months where we were ready to hear it. We were ready to understand. And we did get there to that point with his help and his education. And a lot of the education that he gave us was by watching videos that are out there in the public realm right now. And it's not just necessarily about aliens, but other things, remote viewing and what else?
well,
And physics,
you know what,
physics.
here's something that I think your audience might find very interesting. There's 2 documentaries that I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
One is called Unacknowledged.
Stephen Greer.
Yes,
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer. Mm-hmm.
The second one is called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Yeah.
That's also Dr. Stephen Greer.
Yes, it is.
And I think what people need to understand and really think about, because the more I think about it, a lot of the stuff that I have heard, been told, that in the past didn't make a lot of sense to me, even memes that talk about philosophical stuff, all of a sudden it takes on a whole different context, a whole different meaning to me when I think about it from the standpoint that the way to communicate with aliens is through collective consciousness.
Telepathic.
They don't talk to you. They communicate telepathically.
Right.
And we have the ability, all of us, to do it. We just don't do it because we don't know how. But we have that capacity within our brains to do it. And that's one of the things when you watch these documentaries that you start to understand. And when you talk to or you watch documentaries about people who have had encounters with aliens, let's just call them, they don't talk to them. It's all nonverbal.
Right.
And that's just really the tip of the iceberg, because this whole concept of collective consciousness and the ability to use your mind telepathically, and who knows in what other ways that we're just not capable of understanding yet. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot of potential. And what we've been told is the aliens, they look like us. They walk among us. The almond-shaped eyes, the little green men that everybody typically think of.
Behind you?
Yeah, these guys back here.
Yeah, those guys back there, those aren't aliens.
Right.
Those are biological drones.
I know it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you what he
Been
told
told.
us, and I have no reason not to believe him.
Yeah.
But I will also say this sort of kind of brings us full circle back to the beginning a little bit. You know, the one thing that I think the audience needs to understand, and this is really important, the Earth is one of the crown jewels of the interstellar universe. There are very few planets like this one. And it's important in the universe because if something happened to Earth, it doesn't just affect us, it affects everything else out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people can understand that. So one thing we were told is that the aliens will not allow us to destroy this planet with nuclear weapons. It's just not going to happen. And we have tried numerous times to first strike. I'm not saying necessarily the United States,
Right.
but they've shut it down every time. They won't allow it. because destroying the ionosphere with nuclear fallout will kill the planet. And they won't allow that to happen.
And it will go out into space and cause more havoc.
Yeah, it'll cause havoc elsewhere. The other thing is they are pulling for us
As a species.
They want us to succeed, but they're not going to intervene. And if we screw it up, it's on us. They're not going to save us.
Meaning killing our own planet and our resources.
Well,
they don't want to see us kill our resources, because Earth will recover once we're gone.
Yeah.
But we're going to do ourselves in with pollution and using up our natural resources that we can access to this point.
And global warming is a real thing. And like Janet said, you know, the global warming, the Earth will survive that. The plants will come back, but we won't. And we're doing it to ourselves in our ignorance, our hypocrisy, our selfishness, our racism, our misogyny, all these things we talked about before,
Greed.
the lies, the greed.
Greed.
That's what's going to do us in. And it's a shame because we can do better. And, you know, again, it's the, they're pulling for us. They, you know, they want to see us do better. They didn't like the last 4 years. They didn't like, but again, it's up to us. And I know what I want to see for our future. We have a grandson coming here in about 2 months.
Well, congratulations.
First one.
Yeah, first
Oh,
one.
wow.
First grandchild.
Congrats.
We couldn't possibly be that old, could we?
I hate to break it to you, but you know what I mean. I think we all want that. And that's something that regardless of what your political view is, what your race is, what your age is, you know, you want to, you know, this is a great world. It's a wonderful planet. And I want my kids to continue to have a great experience. I want my grandkids to have a great experience, and the ones I'll never meet. But that responsibility falls on me and everybody else out there. We all can do better, and we must do better. And I think if you put it in context with everything that we've talked about, some of the selfishness and the greed, how much money does a person need?
Right.
You know, after a while, it's your self-worth isn't dependent on the size of your bank account. Right. It depends on, you know, how, you know, the work you do in this world and the people's lives that you impact in positive ways. That's what it's all about. Yeah. So we all know that, right? Yeah. We all understand that. And it's just time that we put our actions where, you know, where our philosophies deep down really are.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And that's a perfect message. You know, money is power, right? And everybody wants to rule the world. So, and if everybody could stop putting themselves first and stop trying to one up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If we could work together, that's the message of Jesus too, wasn't it? You know, for everybody.
Well, pretty much. Certainly. By the way, you want me to blow your mind?
Certainly was.
Blow my mind again.
There's some that say that Jesus was an alien.
That blows my mind. That does.
He had great impact, didn't he?
He did have great impact.
And he had great wisdom. The more you think about it, the more it makes sense to me. I'm not saying that's a fact.
Right.
And what we've been told.
Well, you had this wealth of information with you for 3 days, and he's disclosed some things that are going to change the world if it, you know, continues to grow. Did he tell you where they come from? Like,
there's not just one place.
Okay.
There's a bunch, there's many different species. You know, I think the simplest way we can describe it was how he described it to us. Remember Star Trek?
Yep. The Federation.
The original Star Trek?
Yeah.
Every bit of it is true.
Gene Roddenberry was the creator of that. He was read in.
And he was 33rd degree Freemason.
And he depicted it well. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
It's nothing to be afraid of.
Space,
It's
yeah.
it's a good thing.
Space travel is real. Time travel is real. They can go through wormholes or portals. You probably heard about portals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the natives know all about them. They
Right.
call them sky people. And when you talk to a native that'll open up to you, that is even a little bit spiritual, they don't even flinch. Oh yeah, we know all about them.
Right.
And they understand the telepathic communication.
Mhm.
The church was the one that demonized the natives by calling them savages, which is typically what a group of people will do to another group of people. They'll label them something derogatory to justify persecution.
Right.
And the church did that to the indigenous people. This isn't banging on the church. This is a fact.
Right.
Everybody's seen the newspaper articles about the hundreds of dead children buried in mass graves at these Christian-run schools in Canada. And I'll tell you what,
Oh, no.
in the coming days,
Jeez.
it's worse down here.
Sickening.
And so the indigenous people probably live in balance with nature better than any other culture on the planet. And look what we did to them. And by the way, when the Templars came over here, you know who they aligned with? The natives.
That'll be smart.
Well, you know why? Because they're matriarchal. They venerate the feminine, the goddess. And that's what they had in common. The natives also practiced their own version of Freemasonry. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It's called the Medewin, Mediwin. Look it up. And I've been in their sweats. And I can tell you this, they know all about the Templars. They were the ones that guarded the treasures for over 400 years until our founding fathers took up the mantle and finished the job. It's called the United States of America.
Yeah.
And you're welcome and treat it with respect.
For your freedom.
Yeah.
Because freedom is free.
That's a fact.
Never, never.
Sorry, I get a little spun up.
Hey, I love it.
The whole thing on January 6th really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what the Templar treasure was used for eventually, was the revolution.
Really?
Money. It cost money. They had to go and retrieve the treasure that they brought over here. They had all these little, think of them as little bank accounts all over
Yeah.
along the seaboard.
And don't forget about the native
They knew where they
contribution.
were, and the natives helped guard it because they were part of it.
It was their covenant with the goddess. Their brothers asked them to protect it. You got to remember something, gold and crosses and menorahs and silver and jewels, they meant nothing to the natives.
Right.
But it meant something to their brothers, and they said, will you guard this? And they did. And it was a father to son tradition for 400 years. So we owe them our thanks. Instead of treating them like shit, we should be honoring them for what they deserve.
I
They
agree.
were,
But look what happened.
and the masses took over and took the land. Why? Because they claimed manifest destiny.
That's me.
God said, we will work the land so we can take it, because the natives are not working the land.
Well, they weren't destroying the
It's
land. They were living in
ridiculous.
balance. They used it
Ridiculous. They're, yeah, exactly.
intelligently.
Living in balance with
They didn't
nature.
over harvest, over hunt, didn't, overuse the land. And, now we've depleted all the nutrients. And I mean, you know what's
Water.
going on. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
I know.
You
You're
know,
right.
the water and the aquifers and the river, the Colorado River is
And this whole
doesn't
virus thing,
drained
Yeah.
into the ocean anymore.
instead of blaming, Wuhan and the Chinese, maybe Mother Earth is flicking some of the fleas off her back. Maybe there's too many of us because we can't control our own population because we're too stupid. That's the truth. Just aggravates the hell out of me when I think about it. But, people have got to start looking inward instead of blaming everybody else. What can I do to fix the problem?
Mhm. Yeah, I wish we would. I wish the whole world would collectively look inward
That's what we got to do. And if we can raise the collective consciousness, even a few percentage points, it'll raise it for everyone, even those who don't want to think that way.
Right.
We will help ourselves as a species, which is what we need to do.
Yeah. I'm sorry for us to get so heavy here.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I got to tell you, we have to, because we don't have a lot of time. And that has also been made clear to us. So we have it in us. I know we can do it. We just have to want to do it.
Yeah, we're getting to a tipping point where there might not be a way back.
Did they offer any kind of timeline, any kind of window?
They did, but I don't want to put out numbers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it
varies.
You know, but it's not long. It's not long.
Hey, we're there now. We need to change our ways.
Yeah.
And need to be leaders.
Well,
we need to be leaders of the world in changing our ways.
It's not like the curtain goes dark, but we are getting to the point of no return with the way we're treating the planet for us to be able to sustain ourselves. The planet will continue, but we may not.
Right.
And we've got to get our act together. And some of the things that we're arguing about are so irrelevant in the grand scheme. It's insane, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, this conversation sounds a lot like the conversations I have with my wife out in the patio and in the evenings when we both get home from work, you know, about how we wish we could just wake up those around us.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. Well,
So
you know, another subject that is, you know, in the news today is, you know, the anti-vaccination people.
Mm-hmm.
And just reading an article, we're season ticket holders for the Vikings, right? Minnesota Vikings, that's our team.
Right.
Right now, 3 of our 4 quarterbacks are in training camp or in COVID protocol. They can't practice until Thursday because they weren't vaccinated. And
they were exposed.
And there was an article that just talked about how these people made a personal choice that I think is very selfish, personally, because it's not just about you not getting vaccinated. The fact is, if everybody got vaccinated, we would be done with COVID. We'd be done. But the reason we're not, and it's going to get worse again before it gets better, is because too many people have not taken the shot. But here's the thing. So 3 out of 4 quarterbacks cannot practice, including our starter, Kirk Cousins, because they don't want to get vaccinated. So what happens during the season when we got a big game against Green Bay for the conference title, and all of a sudden they get COVID?
Yeah.
What does that do to the locker room?
Yeah.
The guys that were vaccinated, that are putting their bodies on the line every frickin' day to keep him upright. But he's too selfish to get a vaccine for whatever reason. Look, we've been vaccinated for over 6 months. And you know, there's no chip that goes in your body. Everybody already has a chip.
Right.
If the to know, they know. Okay, so stop.
we carry our tracking devices, don't we?
Yeah, come on. I mean, give me a break. You know, you can't hide from them. And if you're not doing anything wrong, why are you worried about it? You know, what's the big deal? It's just people have we got to think as one again. There's too many of us now. We can't. Our individual freedoms are going to continue to be taken away. Wearing a mask, what's the big frickin' deal? I don't like wearing a mask, but if it helps reduce it even a little, put the damn thing on. If it's the law, I mean, why do people show up at the airport, they get on the plane, and then make a big stink about wearing a mask? You knew that before you went to the airport, you jackwagon. Stop it. Just stop it. Jesus.
Well, and the other thing is, we don't want more variants to develop.
Yeah.
And that's what will happen, because people who are not vaccinated are the incubators for new variants to start. And that we don't want to happen, because what if one develops that right now we can't keep up with. In
Well,
terms of vaccinations,
what's
then
gonna
we're
happen-
all in trouble again.
What's going to happen is the vaccine shot that we got is going to be worthless if a new variant continues to mutate because not enough people are vaccinated.
And then it'll come down to getting boosters or new
Well,
inoculations, right?
Vaccines.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. And anyway, it's like, my God, we've got so many other bigger problems. Just get the damn shot. Just
Breathing you're hearing is not us. It's this
You
giant
see,
German Shepherd.
you
here,
gotta
which is
wait, honey.
Bruce's dog.
It's all
She's a
right.
beautiful girl, but she wants Grandpa to play with her right now.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I told you guys it would only be about an hour, and I think the dog was keeping a timer going because
Yeah, maybe she was. She's pretty smart.
it's been right at an hour. So I guess
Well, sorry we got so heavy on you.
I know you're good. I love it. That's the whole point of this show is to have people come on and just, I usually revolve around the unexplained and paranormal, but there's sometimes when real talk just has to break through and we have real talk, So
Well, you know what? I mean, we had a guy over here not too long ago who is going to be getting, I can't say his name, but he's going to be getting a brand new radio show on a big network. And he really is just doing his own podcast right now. But I've known him for a number of years. He's a really, really good guy. And we got on the subject of disclosure. And he said, when I first heard that you were involved in this, I really wanted to talk to you and get your take on this whole thing, which I just explained to you basically our take. And he said, there is no bigger story. I don't care what subject matter you want to talk about.
Exactly.
This is the biggest story you could possibly talk about.
Yeah.
And that's why I get so passionate about it, because even if we change one person or a few people to really think deep and hard about this and change the way they think about our place in the world and take seriously what we all need to do, that personal responsibility, then I'm doing my job, and I've done something that has contributed to the most important thing there is, our species survival. And hopefully someday and what we were told is the aliens want humans to become part of the interstellar community.
Wow.
Just Gene Roddenberry envisioned.
Yeah.
And
Just
we
like
can
Star
do
Trek.
it if we want to. We just have to want to.
Yeah.
I could talk to you guys about disclosure. I would like to have a like hour by hour play by play of what went on with this guy.
Well, we have a lot
Wow.
more, and actually we're going to be seeing him
Yeah.
in the next almost
About
a week from now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
We're going to be spending some time with him. We're going to get the latest breakdown, so we'll have more to talk about the next time.
I know you can't go into too much, but I know there's multiple species. Did he say about a ballpark figure how many we're talking about that we're dealing with in this federation? Did they give any kind of?
Well,
I don't recall.
we've never asked him that question, but I have heard him mention at least 6, 7, 8 different species, but that doesn't, I doubt that's anywhere near all of them, but he's talked about different groups, different species.
I guess they don't have to even be in our galaxy if they're coming through wormholes and all of that. They can just pop in from wherever. So the whole worry about
they're not from our galaxy, they're from other places.
Yeah. Wow.
There's really nothing to worry about, is what we've been.
Yeah, look, if they wanted to take us out, they would have done it a long time ago. That's not what they want to do.
No.
That's not their goal. They're pulling for us.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Nope.
I hope so. We need all the help we can get, right?
Yeah, you're right.
We do.
You're right.
And it really was a mind bender to think, because we've always just thought in terms of our own planet, right? You can't really think about anything beyond that,
Right.
because there's nowhere else to go right now, right?
Right.
So that's why we have all this infighting. It's like a bunch of roommates living in one house. Well, suddenly if you have other households to interact with, oh, get your mind off your problems within your household and look at what we have potential to do. The
Yeah.
possibilities are endless and incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
We need to stop fighting about each other's religions and territory and things like that. We need to just realize we are all one species. We all represent our home,
Yeah.
planet Earth.
This is our home. Yeah.
Let's take care of it. Let's show the rest of the universe that we're not a bunch of idiots, that we care about our planet and we care about each other.
And we care about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're ready for them to teach us. We have to be humble. We have to be willing to receive those lessons.
Right. Now, do you think that we can blame this culture that we have, this selfishness, this, self-obsession, compared to these other civilizations, these other races? Are we just that much younger of a species that we haven't gotten there yet? Or where did we go wrong? How do they have this figured out, to where they can travel and they can spread a message of peace and love? How ancient are they? Are they?
I think they're far more ancient than we could ever even imagine.
Yeah.
Must be.
Yeah. Well, some of the questions you're asking are great questions.
Really good
I don't know
questions.
if we necessarily have all the answers. I
Yeah,
mean,
not us personally.
I know that we as a species are not nearly as old as we want to think we are.
Right.
There's some discussion. Some people say that we were seated here.
We are the
in part in their vision.
Yeah.
And we're not the first iteration of humans.
Right.
Have you heard that before?
I have. And that I bring my dad on to this show every once in a while. And my dad is one of the people who tend to believe that we were seated here. And it would make his day if you told me right now that that's what this man that visited told you, that we are.
You know what we say in Freemasonry? When someone asks a question that we really can't answer, we say, I can neither confirm nor deny. And usually that means yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
I think there definitely was some of that going on. That's just my personal opinion. If this is all really true, and I believe that it is, that there are all these wonderful species out there, why wouldn't we be part of that?
Right.
Already?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It does. It makes sense. And this is a good place for an incubator, I guess, ain't it? We got everything.
Well, why don't we save it for the next time?
All right. I'll do that as long as you promise to come back again.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get a good dose of our friend here, and we'll have lots of questions. The funny part is he listens to most of these interviews.
Oh, yeah?
And he gives us a breakdown on how we did.
Yes, he calls me Janitarium. Now, Janitarium, you got a little too negative about this or that.
Yeah. Well,
He's great. He's great. Been a really wonderful teacher, and he's incredibly smart. And about 30% of what he says to me in any given conversation goes over my head. And I hope that it's able to come back around again so I catch it the next time.
Wow.
Mostly because I'm so busy still processing what he just said that the next thing
You don't catch, yeah. No, he's the one thing I will say, he is incredibly intelligent,
yes.
but he's also a really good dude.
Mhm.
And he's great. I'll give you a quick suggestion before we go.
Sure.
You want to watch a great series that he recommended.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's called Dark.
I think it was Hulu.
Yeah, I think it was on Hulu, and it was actually produced in Germany.
It's 3 seasons.
And but it's got, you know, English voiceover.
Right.
And when you first watch it, you watch their mouths, it kind of messes you up a little bit, but within,
Not too much.
I'd say
didn't
within
really
the first
notice it.
20 minutes, you'll forget all about that.
Awesome.
It's 3 seasons. I think it's 9 episodes each, something like that. And then, but it's really good. The acting is phenomenal.
Really good acting.
The storyline is, I mean, the basic story is easy to follow, but following the characters and their transitions is very confusing, but it will all come together. They do catch up so you can figure out who's who. But here's why it's confusing. Basically, it involves a nuclear reactor.
Mm-hmm.
This is fictitious, right?
In Germany.
In Germany, that underneath it contains a portal.
Or it
And the
creates a
nuclear
portal.
plant does some funky things to the portal. So you're watching the show, and all of a sudden, the main character that you meet when he's a teenager might walk into the room where the teenager is, and it's him in middle age talking to himself.
Oh, wow.
Middle-aged person recognizes his teenage self,
Well, he knows it's him.
but the teen doesn't recognize.
The teen doesn't know he's talking to himself.
Nice.
Bending shit like that.
Yeah.
This thing's so good. But there's also an old age person.
Mhm.
And the people that they cast for this show, they look like the younger versions and vice versa.
Yeah,
It's
really-
amazing how well it's cast.
And almost every character you end up meeting in their 3 times of life at some point.
Yeah, they're youth, middle age, and old age.
Because and trying to figure out how this portal, this time shift thing, and how time sifts, which isn't always the way we think of it as linear.
Right.
Your future can affect your past, and
Right.
vice versa. And it's just a mind blower.
Wow.
Butterf-
It's not the alien thing. It doesn't get into that.
Right.
It's physics. I mentioned that before. There's a lot that we don't understand about space, time, and physics. Okay.
Mhm.
And those things are important. And those are things that our universal neighbors do understand well. We're behind on that in terms of what they know.
I'll definitely check that out.
Watch the show. What our contact told us was the science is real.
Yes.
Time travel is real.
Wow.
Have it now.
Yeah.
And I think when you watch the series, you'll appreciate it. And I will say this: he was our contact was a technical advisor on the show, and he got along so well with everybody that the main character in midlife, the male, looks just like him. The guy they cast
Jonas.
was cast because it was an ode to our guy.
Wow. Okay.
He
Okay.
looks like him.
I'll be looking for
Does
him.
look
then.
like him. Yep.
It's pretty cool. But
That-
every time we talk to him, we learn something new. And sometimes he'll chide us because we don't remember the last lesson.
On kids.
He's like, come on, kids.
I told you this last time.
Yeah, come on, you guys.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one, and I'll promise I'll let you go. One last question. Is he one of us or one of them?
That's a great question. And I've pondered that thought. And my answer is, I don't freaking know. I don't know, honestly. It's a great question.
I think he's one of us,
Think
but
so?
I don't know that we could really tell.
Yeah. Oh, he told you we all look alike, right?
He said they walk
Yeah.
around us. They're walking
But-
among us.
But is there a way that they could reveal themselves? I don't know.
Hmm.
Speed. We have yet to experience that, if that is the case.
I'm anxious to find out. You know,
Yeah.
If-
Me too, man.
if they want to knock on my door, I'd open it for them.
Yeah. Well, pay attention to to the videos that are coming out from the military, and especially the Navy pilots and things.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Because this is their way of getting us used to the idea that there's something more going on than just us.
Yep.
So
Soft disclosure.
soft disclosure, right? And Scott actually, one last thing, had a fan write to him and say, by the way, I watched your episode about Montezuma's treasure, and did you see the UFO in the background behind you?
Yeah.
Oh,
And we checked it out, and there is one.
wow.
And we
Yeah.
checked with our production company, which is here in Minnesota. They pulled up the original footage, and it's there.
Yeah.
It wasn't added.
And we showed it to our guy and he said, sure looks like it.
Nobody noticed it in 8 years since that episode was aired.
Yeah, it was over 8 years ago.
And then we talked to the, this
Well,
blew our.
don't get, well,
God.
well, this
I
story.
gotta say this. Scott, it's just too incredible.
All right.
So the guy whose land it was on, where this episode was shot,
Right.
and it was in southern Utah. We hadn't talked to that guy. Scott met him once shooting, never heard from him again. That morning, after we learned about this, that guy wrote Scott an email. It was an email to several people.
The next morning.
But he was on it.
Wow.
And we couldn't believe it.
Right. That goes beyond like a synchronicity. You know, that's like,
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
were able to talk to him and told him the whole thing. And he said, because our contact asked us to talk to him and say, hey, is there anything in the background up there on that cliff that he knows of that could have given this illusion? You know, is there weather balloons launched from there for some reason behind there, or
Right.
something with power lines? Nothing, nothing. He's never seen anything like it.
wow. Wow.
Just
There you go. They're always with us then, right?
Apparently.
somebody was watching.
Well, guys, thank you again so much for doing this show with me. This has been like a dream come true for me. It was great to get to know you guys. It's great to meet you and talk to you. Hopefully the show does you some kind of service and it's not just a fanboy experience. Hopefully this message.
No.
I'm sure it will.
No, I hope the listeners take what we've told them to heart and do a little bit of their own research and a little bit of soul searching too. And everybody has to kind of think about, what can I do to make this thing better? And if everybody does even just a little bit, it'll make a big difference,
That's right. Every voice comes together with the rest and makes a much louder noise, right?
That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. You'll have a good
All right.
night.
Thanks, Bo.
And I'll send you a link to this so your contact can review it. Okay.
Okay.
We'll tell them, we'll forward it on. We'll say, how'd we do, Pops?
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Bo.
All right.
Had a great time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.